from PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for the podcaster that I couldn't, just because of practice, I can say sympathetic yawn. But I hope I'm giving you. I hope I can sympathetically make you yawn and then drift off. Has anyone ever said yawn and yawn and then suddenly it's properly past the break of dawn? Yawn and yawn. Next thing I know, it's past comfortably past the break of dawn when I want to be awake. Hopefully you won't be saying that, but you'll think something similar to that later tomorrow or later on this week or something, because it's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. All right, everybody, it's time to talk about tonight's sponsor, Helix Sleep, and they've got some amazing deals coming up. You're going to hear about it at the end of this ad read, so do not miss out. I want you to right now to open up your phone. Just do it with me. I'm going to go to helixsleep.com/sleep, and if I were you, I wouldn't want to, I don't know what your relationship with your bed is right now. I've had a long-term relationship with my Helix mattress. It fits my needs, how I sleep. I sleep on my side, I sleep on my stomach, but now I'm sleeping more on my back, and I'm relocating, and unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I could ship my mattress because I have to move my stuff before I move. But that's okay. It means I get a new Helix, so I'm going to take the Helix quiz right now, helixsleep.com/sleep. 30 seconds, and you can, okay, one or two sleepers. One. Okay, let me put in my email. Put in my name here, give a little bit of information. Okay, what size mattress am I considering? I got that down. All right. I don't know if are you taking this quiz with me at helixsleep.com/sleep? All right, toss. I guess I toss and turn. So I'm going to pick toss and turn. And what kind of firmness? Okay, I'm going to pick my firmness that fits my needs. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get yours, Okay, I'm going to talk about my back there, talk about temperature. All right, I got matched with my mattress. Oh, boy, and it's a different one than I have now just because I made a couple changes to how I sleep. So I'm going to check this out and think about it for my next Helix I'm going to be sleeping in. So take that Helix quiz. It's going to be coming right to your door, but most of all, it'll be a mattress that fits you, your needs, and how you sleep. And the best news is that Helix has amazing deals for Sleep With Me listeners, but only if you use our link. So go to helixsleep.com/sleep for 27% off site-wide during their Labor Day sale. Happening now. This offer is exclusive for listeners of Sleep With Me. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for this exclusive Labor Day sale offer. That's 27% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/sleep. Hey, are you a listener that falls asleep very fast? Please listen. I hope if you don't fall asleep yet, please. If you fall asleep fast, I really need your attention. The thing is, we root for fall asleep fast listeners, right? Especially a lot, like not just me, but all the other listeners out there. Man, you're a super listener and you fall asleep fast. This podcast has really changed things for you, huh? And I got to admit, some of us are jealous. You put the podcast on, you fall asleep fast. You're proof the podcast works, even in unintended ways, because most people are winding down during this part of the show. But the other thing is, if you fall asleep fast, you really are the only fall asleep fast person paying attention to me right now and listening to me. And I really appreciate you hearing me. You got a couple options here to participate in the future of the podcast. The first one is just by thinking about the other people that fall asleep fast and sending your comfort to them and smiling that maybe they're already, all the other fall asleep fast listeners are falling asleep. They're already asleep, or they're in that state where they're drifting off. Can you root for them and send them comfort? Send them some relief in the deep, dark night, or reassurance. That's cool. We're glad you're falling asleep fast. Or are you in a place where you need that comfort from all the other listeners? You're not falling asleep fast right now. Maybe you will in a few minutes after you pay attention to me. I appreciate it. But that all those other listeners are rooting for you. And they're happy and jealous. You fall asleep fast most nights you listen to the show. This is great. they're smiling? Can you feel other people across the world smiling and kind of laughing with you? And then do you want to do both of those things for other listeners? Smile and laugh with them and feel their smile and their kindness and their relief for you? You could do either one or you could do both. And then I'm not sure which of the Fall Asleep Fast listeners you want to be right now. If you're paying attention to me, listen to me right now. You could be the one who's rooting for another Fall Asleep Fast listener who's listening and hearing me right now to support the show. And you could even kind of start a chant with me: fall asleep fast, fall asleep fast, fall asleep fast. Like building towards a very mythological but sleepy, crescendo. Yeah. Or are you the person, the one Fall Asleep Fast listener who I'm rooting for and all these other people are rooting for fall asleep fast, who's going to support the show, whether it's to keep falling asleep fast, because Sleep in Me Plus was built with Fall Asleep Fast listeners in mind. There's no ads. There's a bunch of different formats of the show. Or is it because, I fall asleep fast. The only, it's kind of, there's not really any other styles of podcasts that are successful but desperate for the support of people that barely listen to the show. But I'm desperate. That's why I'm rooting for those Fall Asleep Fast listeners. So if you're the one, you could be rooting for other listeners. You could be rooting for that listener to support the show. Or maybe you're the one. If you're the one, you're going to fall asleep fast either in a few seconds or tomorrow. So don't wait. If you're a Fall Asleep Fast listener and you can feel those vibes cheering for you to support the show, please support the show right now at sleepinmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Oh, Mystery Bart. A lot of people help out on this show. Who are they?
Posty poster son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes. Carl W. the legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the Mystery Bart. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Hannah like banana. Leah does the transcripts.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. And don't forget, the most comfortable way to listen to Sleep With Me is with sleep phones. You can get sleep phones at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep-phones and use Sleep With Me for $5 off at checkout. Sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep-phones. Use Sleep With Me at checkout. What do you say we get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed and turn out the lights and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. It could be thoughts, things on your mind you're thinking about from the past, the present, or the future. So thoughts or thinking stuff. It could be feelings, anything coming up for you emotionally. Physical sensations. It could be changes in time or temperature or routine. It could be something else, situational. It could be something going on, or it could be a mystery or just a frustrating mystery. Whatever is keeping you awake, I'd like to take your mind off of that and distract you, keep you company so that you can fall asleep. And what I propose to do is ideally you could, I can let you get, help, I don't know, I'm doing something with my shoulders. I'm not slumping my shoulders, though if someone at a distance, a stern person from my past. They'd say, are you slumping your shoulders? I'd say, no, I'm leaning in. I'm getting comfortable, imagining I'm a listener in bed and I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed because Sleep With Me is there to keep me company. Scoots is trying to create a safe place. He's trying to smooth it. He's trying to pat it. He's trying to rub it down and say safe place. And then he's going to send his voice across the deep, dark night. He'll use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents. Which means, yeah, his voice is a little bit different. His content and his tone is different. It doesn't ever make sense or get to the point. He gets mixed up. Rarely does he talk. Well, rarely is the wrong way, but he talks in the third person, the fourth person. He tries to be one of those what's that word? Omniscient or omniscient? Omniscient, I think it is. He suffers from the omission of omniscience. Has that been used before? I don't think I've used that in a podcast episode. I've used I love when words go together and they don't fit together. Imagine that. Maybe that could be a story. I love stories like that. Old omniscient and omniscient and omniscient. Oh, whoops, it's omission and omniscient. Excuse me. Confused you once again. Oh, so confused. I thought, it was like my brain omits stuff, omission. Sorry about that. It makes me want to say, what's your mission? Oh, mission, an ode to missions. By the character of Mission Impossible, whose name, Ethan, by Ethan, fourth grader. I saw that in my summer reading program. Little did I know it was soon to be the leader of whatever, an ode to missions. So where was I? Oh, so if you're new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. This podcast is very different. The reason it exists is because you deserve a good night's sleep. Now, this podcast may not, unfortunately, be able to provide that for you. But I'm going to give you some information about that coming up here. But really, the reason I make the show, you do deserve a good night's sleep. Our world would be such a better place if you get the rest you need, because your world will be a better place. I also make the show because I know how it feels. I've been there, tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep. I know I've been there. So that's why I make the show. Other things that new listeners need to know is, or could know, hopefully you're already barely listening to me, but this is a podcast that doesn't work for everybody, but it does take a few tries to get used to. Because you say, wait a second, does that guy not know the difference between, his brain can't even determine when he's trying to speak the difference between omniscient and omission. And I'm wishing someone could cure my confused condition, and that would be the omniscient narrator. Has any character ever said that? Because that would actually fit. I could use some omniscient. I forgot. Is it omniscient? It's omniscient, right? I do have dyslexia, just so anybody is like, is this guy, why is he doing this? And that's a normal reaction for a new listener. As soon as you don't take me seriously, I'm serious about my goofing around, but that takes a couple times to get used to. So that's what most listeners say, regular listeners, people that listen 300, 400 nights a year, or 300, 400 episodes a year. They say, man, at first I didn't like the show because it just got on my nerves. It was, you were just prattling on and on and on. And then some part of me was like, indeed, that is what he's doing. There is a mission to his omission of sensibility. Omission, right? That's the right word. So you may not like the show. It's also a podcast you don't really listen to. You just kind of barely listen. That also takes some getting used to. That you say, okay, I'm just supposed to kind of pay attention to the show. Because, yeah, this podcast does not really put you to sleep either. I'm here to keep you company while you fall asleep, which is different, right? I'm here to take your mind off stuff. If you can't sleep, I'm here to be here as long as you're awake, or if you're awake the whole night, episode after episode, I'll be here talking to you. A friendly voice in the deep, dark night, because there is one thing I kind of was joking about, this narration stuff, but I always have a lot of internal narration going on, or commentary. And there is one of those voices, and it's like, it thinks it's omniscient, but we know it's omitting a lot of the truth, and it's just commenting on the past, present, future, or other stuff while you're trying to fall asleep. Oh, what does that have to do with, but this is a podcast you just barely listen to. Oh, it doesn't really put you to sleep. I'm here to keep you company while you drift off. So those are two things. What else? Podcast. Oh, the structure of the show can really throw people off as well. So let me tell you about that. So the show starts off with a greeting. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So you feel welcome and seen. You say, okay, this is a place I could see myself walking into, checking it out. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. That's a greeting. Then there's support for the listeners, more ongoing listeners. So if you're new, you say, okay, like resources for listeners, resources to support the communities around the show that we live in and exist in. And then there's support for the show, so it can be free and out twice a week. That's our goal there. Then there's the intro, which goes from, minute 6 or minute 8 or so, and just goes on and on and on for about 12 to 20 minutes. And that a lot of, either the business and the support can throw people off, or the intro. And sometimes people think it's the same thing, but the intro is really a show within a show, and it's designed so that it's adaptable, right? Some people fall asleep during it. Some people skip it. Some people don't listen to it. They listen to story-only episodes on Patreon, or they build their own playlists of what they like to listen to. But most listeners, the intro serves as a chance for you to wind down and get ready for bed, which is pretty aligned with a lot of the thinking around getting, developing a good habit around bedtime. It's kind of built in to work with that. And what I've seen work for me and other listeners, having some wind down time to give you some distance from the day so that you're not falling asleep right away. You could, and if you do, that's great. But the intro is designed to ease you into bedtime, but to be different every time, so that that omniscient part of you, or faux omniscient, I guess I would say, it's not really going to be embarrassing if I'm mispronouncing that word, because I know I do that all the time. And I actually feel bad for people when they mispronounce words and they say omniscient or omniscient or whatever, omniscient, the old omniscient narrator. You say, Scoots, that's how we pronounce it. And I say, oh, okay. But what was I saying? Oh, well, once that narrator gets going in your brain, I don't know. It can what's the structure of the show? I don't know. The intro is there it should be different every time to kind of trick that part of you, because otherwise it would just kind of make a running commentary on a repetitive intro. This way the intro is different every time. So you kind of have something to just barely listen to if you're doing some sort of pre-bed relaxing thing, or you're in bed and you say, oh, Scoots just, once again, I didn't think it would be that words that would mix Scoots up, or set of words, but they're mixing them up just like normal. So that's the intro. Then there's business between the intro and the story. That's just where some of the sponsors like their business, and that's before the bedtime story part of the show starts. Then there's a bedtime story. To be honest, I'm even not sure what it's going to be. It might be, I don't know what the story's going to be, but you'll know when you're, or you might not, maybe by the title, or maybe you'll be sleeping, or maybe you'll be relaxing. And then there's the thank yous at the end. So that's the structure of the show. That's kind of why I make the show. And I think that's it. I'm really glad you're here. I really appreciate you checking the podcast out. I really work hard, and there's a lot of work that goes in the show because, like I said, your sleep is important and you're important. So thanks again for coming by, and I really hope we can help you fall asleep. And here's a couple ways I'm able to do it for you for free twice a week. If Sleep With Me has changed your life for the better, think about supporting the show at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. All right, but this is Scoots. We're trying to reset and get the super listeners on this campaign for super listeners to support the show. And the thing is, it really does come down to, well, particularly if you are an all-night listener or you fall asleep fast and you're hearing me, I really do need your attention. But if you listen 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week, if you've listened for longer than a year, if you've listened longer than 3 years, if the podcast has changed your life, I do need your attention. And here's the thing. Now we got options, right? I want everybody to be a participant in this, and I'll just run through the ways you could participate. And a lot of them you could do right now from the comfort of your own bedroom or wherever you are. And even if you're a new listener or a temporary listener or a situational listener or somebody just going through a hard time right now, you could participate too. But again, if you're an all-night listener or fall asleep fast, I really want you to lean into this, which is like the first part of it is like sending or thinking about sending your comfort across the deep, dark night to another listener. And maybe it starts with a super listener who listens just like you, but knowing they're out there somewhere in the world, or maybe it's a future super listener, somebody that's new, just like you were new. Can you send them comfort across the deep, dark night? You just barely smile for them and just think, I'm glad you're here. I hope this podcast can help you. Do you want to do that, right? Do you want to participate in that? Or are you in a place right now where you need that comfort to come into you? Do you want to receive it right now? Or just know that it's out there? Because I don't know if always I'm in the receiving mood, right? But do you want to do that? Like, be like, man, there's other listeners. And this is true, by the way, that there's other listeners right now rooting for you. People that listen differently than the way you do, and people that are similar, whatever is keeping you awake or getting in the way of you getting the rest, or your listening style, that there's other listeners right now rooting for you. So those are two ways you could participate, or you could do both, right? You could send out some comfort and you could receive that comfort right now. Or you could alternate or whatever works for you. But I'd love it, just like I talk about in the intros, for you to be a little bit more of a part of that. And again, it's passive, right? But then we're also rooting, and maybe you could root for me together, that someone, and maybe it's you, is listening and hearing me right now. And the podcast has changed your life to a degree where you're paying attention. And maybe you're an all-night listener. The show will not go on without more all-night listeners and people fall asleep fast supporting the show. And you want to be that one that's like, man, I guess I just didn't hear you all those other times, or I wasn't really listening. And that's okay, because we're rooting for that one person, 1 out of 20 super listeners. So I don't know. Are you one of the 19 people who are rooting right now, or can you feel those 19 people rooting for you? You've been thinking about supporting the show. Maybe it's for the bonus content. Maybe it's because the podcast has changed your life, or maybe you're just curious to check it out. There's 19 other super listeners rooting for you to support the show right now, to be a hero, to be a heroine, to change the future of Sleep With Me. And believe me, I'm rooting for you because we need your support. If you're listening to me, if you're hearing me right now, and if you're that one person, please don't wait. You could support the show. You could get access to Sleep With Me Plus, which is built with super listeners in mind. It'll change the way you listen to the show because it's built with people. It's ad-free. It's amazing because we built it with super listeners in mind. And think about those 19 people that are rooting for you. And even if it's indirect gratitude, not only has the podcast changed your life, it's changed those 19 people's lives that are also rooting for you to support the show. So you could do all that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus, sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the second time you get to hear me say that. Welcome, because this episode is constructed from an intro from the past and our Read With Me episodes here. It's a Frankie and Victor episode with our friend Frank and his, so I'm reading from the book, Victor and Frankie, also known as a famous Mary Shelley novel. And this is a little bit different than episodes we've done with Sleep With Me, but we tested this out on Sleep With Me Plus. It was so popular, we wanted to bring it to everyone. So it's me reading through a book, also paraphrasing, making stuff sleepy, but it's not perfectly sleepy. I mean, just like everything else we make, you know. It exists within this world, but it's pretty chill. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, more of Victor and Frankie. Thanks, everybody. Chapter 8. We passed a few sad hours until 11 o'clock when the trial was to commence. My father and the rest of the family being obliged to attend as witnesses, I accompanied them to the court. During this whole of this wretched mockery of justice was not pleasant. It was to be decided whether the result of my curiosity and lawless devices would, be like not good for two people, a smiling babe full of innocence and joy, and, the other now living in infamy. And Justine was also a girl of merit, possessed qualities which promised to render her life happy, but now all obliterated, and I the cause. 1,000 times rather would I have confessed myself the one who did it instead of Justine, but I was absent. I wasn't in town. And such a declaration would be considered the ravings of, sooner or later I'm going to be raving, but not so, not the calm statements of not so ravings, They wouldn't have exculpated her, who suffered through me. The appearance of Justine was calm. She was dressed in mourning, and her countenance, always engaging, was rendered by the solemnity of her feelings exquisitely beautiful. Probably not the right time for me to be contemplating her beauty, but whence my eye had seen. Yet she appeared confident in innocence and did not tremble, although gazed and extricated upon by thousands. For all the kindness which her beauty might otherwise have excited was obliterated in the mind of the spectators by the imagination of the enormity she was supposed to be behind. She was tranquil, yet her tranquility was evidently constrained. And as her confusion had been before adduced, as a proof of her guilt, she worked up her mind to the appearance of courage. When she entered the court, she threw her eyes round it and quickly discovered where we were seated. A tear seemed to dim her eye when she saw us, but she quickly recovered herself, and a look of sorrowful affection seemed to attest her utter guiltlessness. The trial began, and after the advocate against her had stated stuff, several witnesses were called. Several strange facts combined against her, which might have staggered anyone who had not such proof of her innocence as I had. She had been out the whole night, and even towards morning had been perceived by the market woman not far from the spot where William went to visit his mother over the Rainbow Bridge. The woman said, "Yo, what are you doing here?" And she looked at her very strangely and only returned a confused and unintelligible answer. She returned to the house about 8 o'clock, and when one inquired where she had passed the night, she replied she was out looking, and demanded earnestly if anything had been heard concerning William. When she found out the news, she was very upset and kept to her bed for several days. The picture, which was then produced by the servant, had found in her pocket, and when Elizabeth, in a faltering voice, proved that it was the same one which, an hour before, did William use it to pay to cross the Rainbow Bridge or not? It was around his neck. The court started to a twitter. Justine was called upon for her defense. As the trial proceeded, her countenance had altered. Surprise, misery, and stuff was strongly expressed. Sometimes she struggled with her tears, but when she was desired to plead, she collected her powers and spoke in an audibly, although variable voice. "God knows," she said, "how entirely I am innocent, but I do not pretend that my protestations should acquit me. I rest my innocence on a plain and simple explanation of the facts. These facts which have been adduced against me, and I hope the character I've always borne will incline my judges to a favorable interpretation where any circumstance appears doubtful or doubtful. She then related that by permission of Elizabeth, she had passed the evening of that night at the house of an aunt at Shen, a village situated about a league from Geneva. On her return about 9 o'clock, she met a man who asked her if he had seen anything of the child. She was alarmed because, he had asked her, and she said, wait a second. So she was looking around, and then the gates of Geneva were shut, and she was forced to remain several hours of the night in a barn belonging to a cottage, not college. She didn't want to call upon the inhabitants to whom she was well known. Most of the night she spent watching. Towards the morning, she believed she slept for a few minutes, and some steps woke her up, and then it was dawn, and she left, that she might again endeavor to find William. If she had gone near where William did partake of the Rainbow Bridge, it was without her knowledge. That she'd been bewildered when questioned by the market woman was not surprising. She spent a sleepless night thinking about William. Concerning the picture, she could give no account. I know, continued Justine, how heavily and fatally this one circumstance weighs against me, but I have no power of explaining it, and when I have expressed my utter ignorance, I am only left to conjecture concerning the probabilities how it got in my pocket. But here I'm also checked. I believe I have nobody who would do this to me on earth. None who would, set me up wantonly. Did someone put it in my pocket? I know of no opportunity afforded someone to do so. Or if they had, why would they take the jewel to, if it was worth money, and then take it and give it back to me? I commit my cause to the justice of the judges, yet I see no room for hope. I beg permission to have a few witnesses examined concerning my character, and if their testimony shall not overweigh what you think, although I'd pledge my salvation on my innocence. Several witnesses were called for her who had known her many years, and they spoke well of her. But there was a lot of strong feelings about her being guilty, so they were timorous and unwilling to come forward. Elizabeth saw even this last resource, her excellent dispositions and irreproachable conduct were about to fail, so she sought permission to address the court. I am, said she, the cousin of William, kind of his sister, for I was educated by and lived with his parents ever since and even long before his birth. It may therefore be judged indecent for me to come forward on this occasion, but when I see someone about to, go through cowardice of her pretended friends, I wish to be allowed to speak, that I may say what I know of her character. I am well acquainted with her. I have lived in the same house with her at one time for 5 and another for nearly 2 years. During all that period, she appeared to me the most amiable and benevolent of human creatures. She nursed Madame Frankenstein, my aunt, with greatest affection and care, and afterwards attended her own mother, who in a tedious situation. This manner excited the admiration of all who knew her, and after which she again lived in my uncle's house, where she was beloved by all the family. She was warmly attached to William, acted towards him like an affectionate mother. For my own part, I do not hesitate to say that, notwithstanding all the evidence produced against her, I believe and rely upon her perfect innocence. She had no temptation for such an action, as the bauble on which the proof rests. If she had earnestly desired it, I would have willingly given it to her, So much do I esteem and value her. A murmur of approbation followed Elizabeth's simple and powerful appeal, but it was excited by her generous interference, but it wasn't in favor of poor Justine, on whom the public indignation had returned with renewed vigor, charging her with blackest ingratitude. She herself wept as Elizabeth spoke. Really turned the tide, made it worse. She did not answer. My own agitation and anguish was extreme the whole time. You know, obviously, I believed in her innocence. I knew it. I mean, could this really have been really innocence? And I don't know. Couldn't believe the situation I was in. Obviously, I couldn't believe I had to put up with this. Nobody was wondering how I was feeling. And when I perceived that the popular voice and the countenance of the judges had already decided against her, I couldn't stay there any longer. I obviously had to rush out of the court in agony. You know, her clearly her pain of her, Justine, the accused, could not equal mine, not even close. I mean, internally, she was sustained by her innocence, but the fangs of remorse tore my bosom and would not forego their hold. I passed a night of unmingled wretchedness. In the morning, I went to court. My lips and throat were parched. I dared not ask this question, but I was known. An officer guessed my cause of my visit. The ballots were thrown. Justine was in trouble. I cannot pretend to describe what I then felt. I had before experienced sensations and non-positive stuff, but I endeavored to bestow upon them adequate expressions. But words cannot convey an idea of how my heart felt at this time, and that I had to endure it. The person to whom I addressed myself added that Justine had already confessed her guilt, and they said the evidence, he observed, was hardly required in so glaring a case, but I'm glad of it. Indeed, none of our judges like to, use just as circumstantial evidence, be it ever so decisive. Wait a second, what I said? This was strange and unexpected intelligence. What could it mean? Had my eyes deceived me? Was I really was it really me, within me? As the whole world would believe me to be if I if I told everybody my suspicions? I hastened to return home, and Elizabeth eagerly demanded the results. My cousin, replied I, it is decided as you may have expected. All the judges had rather that 10 innocent should suffer than 1 guilty should get away. But she confessed. This was a dire blow to poor Elizabeth, who had relied with firmness upon Justine's innocence. Alas, said she, how shall I ever again believe in human goodness? Justine, who I loved and esteemed as my sister, how could she put on those smiles of innocence only to betray? Her mild eyes seemed incapable of any services, incapable of any guile. And yet, soon after, we heard she wanted to see my cousin. My father wished her not to go, but he said that he left it to her own judgment and feelings to decide. Yes, said Elizabeth, I will go, although she is guilty and you, Victor, shall accompany me. I cannot go alone. Gulp. The idea of the visit was to, why do you got to do this? Don't you ever think about how I feel? Yeah, but I couldn't refuse. We entered the gloomy chamber and beheld Justine sitting on some straw at the furthest end. Her hands, her head on her knees, wretchedness, I would say. She rose upon us entering, and when we were left alone with her, she threw herself at the feet of Elizabeth, weeping bitterly. My cousin wept also. Oh, Justine, why did you take from me my last consolation? I relied upon your innocence, and although I was very wretched, I was not so miserable as I am now. And do you also believe that I am so, that I could really do you join with my enemies to crush me and condemn me? Her voice was suffocated with sobs. Rise, my poor girl, said Elizabeth. Why do you kneel if you are innocent? I'm not one of you. I believe you guiltless, notwithstanding the evidence that I heard. Even you said you were guilty. That, you say, is false? Be assured, dear Justine, that nothing can shake my confidence in you for a moment but your own confession. I did, but I confessed a lie. I confessed that I might obtain an absolution, but now that falsehood lies heavier on my heart. The God of heaven forgive me. Ever since my confessor has besieged me, he said, you really are. Even told me I'd be excommunicated if I continued to obdurate. Dear lady, I had none to support me. All looked upon me as a wretch doomed to ignominy and perdition. What could I do? So I told a lie, and now it made me more miserable. She paused, weeping, and then continued. I thought, my sweet lady, that you should believe your Justine, whom your blessed aunt had so highly honored, and who you loved, and knew was a key, wouldn't have got up to any of this stuff. Dearest blessed child, soon I'll see William and hang with him and his mother in heaven, where we shall all be happy. So that consoles me, even though my memory of me left behind won't be great. Oh, Justine, forgive me for having one moment distrusted you, but why did you confess? But do not mourn, dear girl. Do not fear. I will proclaim. I will prove your innocence. I will melt the stony hearts of your enemies by my tears and prayers. You, my playfellow, my companion, my sister, you won't go on any scaffolding. No, no, no. No misfortune like that. Justine shook her head mournfully. I'm not worried about it. That pang is past. God raises my weakness and gives me courage to endure. I leave a sad and bitter place, and if you remember me, think of me one unjustly accused. I am resigned to the fate awaiting me. Learn from me, dear lady, to submit to the will, even if it's not what you wanted. Now, I'm sitting here watching all this, right? During this conversation, I had to go in a corner of the prison room where I could conceal the anguish which possessed me. Had to sit in darkness, despair. Who talk of that? She was going to go to the big farm soon. So she did not feel, as I did, such deep and bitter agony. I gnashed my teeth and ground them together, uttering a groan that came from my inmost soul. Justine started. When she saw who it was, she approached me and said, Dear sir, you are kind to visit me. I hope you do not believe that I am guilty. I was so overtaken with my feelings I couldn't answer. No, Justine, said Elizabeth. He is more convinced of your innocence than I was. For even when he had heard you confessed, he did not believe it. I truly thank him. In these last moments, I feel the sincerest gratitude to those that think of me with kindness. How sweet is the affection of others to whom such a wretch be I. It removes half my misfortune, and I feel as if I can go in peace now. My innocence is acknowledged by you, dear lady, and your cousin. And thus she tried to comfort others and herself. She indeed gained the resignation she desired. But I, really the guilty one, felt the never-dying worm alive in my bosom, which allowed no hope or consolation. Elizabeth also wept and was unhappy. But hers was also the misery of innocence, which, like a cloud that passes over the fair moon, for a while hides but cannot tarnish its brightness. Anguish and despair have penetrated into the core of my heart. I bore some hockey sticks with an H&E before them within me, which nothing could extinguish. We stayed several hours with Justine, and it was great difficulty that Elizabeth could leave. I wish, cried she, that I could stay with you. I cannot live in this world any longer. Justine, though, assumed an air of cheerfulness. This is sometimes, with she's there to serve us, really, and cheer us up. So she, difficulty, repressed her tears and embraced Elizabeth and said in the voice of a half-suppressed emotion, "Farewell, sweet lady. Dearest Elizabeth, my beloved and only friend, may heaven in its bounty bless and preserve you. May this be the last misfortune you have ever suffered. Live and be happy and make it for others so." And on the morrow, Justine took a trip to hang with William and his mother. Elizabeth's heart-rending eloquence failed to move the judges from their settled case. The saintly sufferer was not freed. My passionate and indignant appeals were lost upon them. And when I received their cold answers, I heard the harsh, unfeeling reasoning of these men. My proposed avowal died away on my lips. They'd never believe me, right? They might I'd be proclaiming myself for trouble. But it didn't revoke the sentence passed upon my wretched. But she had it out. My own heart turned to contemplate the deep and voiceless grief of my Elizabeth. This was also my doing, and my father's woe, and the desolation of that late so smiling home was all the work of my thrice accursed hands. Ye weep, unhappy ones, but these are not your last tears. Again you shall raise your funeral wail, and the sound of your lamentations shall again and again be heard. Frankenstein, your son, your kinsman, your early much-loved friend, he who would spend each vital essence for your sakes, who has no thought or sense of joy, except as it is also mirrored in your deep countenances, who would fill the air with blessings and spend his life in serving you. He bids you to weep, to shed countless tears, happy beyond his hopes. If thus inexorable fate be satisfied, if destruction pause before the peace of the grave have succeeded to your sad torments. Thus spoke my prophetic soul, as torn by remorse, despair. I beheld those I loved spend vain sorrow. But it was really, they were the result of my unhallowed arts. Chapter 9. Nothing is more tough to the human mind than after the feelings have been worked up by a quick succession of events. I mean, what could I call the past chapter, but events, But after that, there's calmness, inaction, and certainty that follows and deprives my inner spirit of both hope and, worry. Justine had left our lives, left our family, crossed the Rainbow Bridge, gone to the big farm in the sky where she rested. So that was great for her, but I was still here. Earthbound being, warm, circulatory, circulating. But, beyond that weight of despair and remorse was, I'd forgotten about Justine, but weighing on my heart were those feelings I just couldn't remove. Sleep fled from my eyes. I wandered like a spirit, for I had committed deeds and mischief beyond description. Much, much more, I persuaded myself, was yet behind. But I wasn't all bad because I do have so many positive qualities. So despite that, my heart overflowed with kindness and the love of virtue. I had begun life with benevolent intentions and thirsted for the moment when I should put them in practice and make myself useful to my human beings, to my fellow human beings. Now, all was blasted. Instead of that serenity of conscience which allowed me to look back upon the past with self-satisfaction, just pure self-satisfaction. And from thence gather promise of new hopes. I was seized by remorse and the sense of guilt, which hurried me away to HE double hockey sticks of intensity that no language, even my own, could describe. And, now some would say that it, like my state of mind and my health were interrelated, somatic, I think you would say. But I don't know if I ever entirely recovered from that first shock I sustained. And so I shunned the face of humans, all sound of joy or complacency. Joy, complacency. Solitude was my only consolation. Deep, dark, sweet, sweet, lonely solitude. At whatever the cost, too. My father observed with pain the alteration perceptible in my disposition, in habits, and endeavored by arguments deduced from the feelings of his serene conscious and guiltless life to inspire me with fortitude and awaken in me the courage to dispel the dark cloud which brooded over me. "Do you think, Victor," said he, "that I do not suffer also? No one could love a child more than I loved your brother." Tears came into his eyes as he spoke. "But is it not the duty to those earthbound beings that we should refrain from augmenting their unhappiness by an appearance of immoderate grief? It is also a duty owed to yourself, for excessive sorrow prevents improvement or enjoyment, or even the discharge of daily usefulness, without which no man is fit for society." That's all I had to say about that. This advice, although good, was totally inapplicable to my case. Your sorrow, Papa. Your sorrow. I should have been the first to hide my grief and console my friends if remorse had not mingled its bitterness, its alarm with my other sensations. Now I could only answer my father with a look of despair and endeavor to hide myself from his view. How little he knew. About this time, by the way, we just had to change houses too, you know what I'm saying? And about this time we retired to our house at Belle Rive. This change was particularly agreeable to me. The shutting of the gates regularly at 10 o'clock and the impossibility of remaining on the lake after that hour had rendered our residence within the walls of Geneva very irksome to me. I was now free. Often, after the rest of the family had retired for the night, I took the boat and passed many hours upon the water. Sometimes, with my sails set, I was carried by the wind, and sometimes, after rowing into the middle of the lake, I left the boat to pursue its own course and gave way to my own miserable reflections. I was often tempted, when all was at peace around me, and when I, the only unquiet thing that wandered restless in a scene so beautiful and heavenly, if I, except some annoying things like frogs or birds whose harsh and interrupted croaking was heard only when I approached the shore. Anyway, those frogs made me go off topic. Often, I say, I was tempted to plunge into the silent lake for a swim and get some coolness, you know what I'm saying? And just get, have the water give me a break, break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. But I was restrained, and when I thought of the heroic and suffering Elizabeth, who I tenderly loved, and whose existence was bound up in mine, I also thought of my father and brother. And should I by my base desertion leave them exposed and unprotected to the malice of the fiend who I had let loose among them? At these moments I wept bitterly and wished that my peace would revisit my mind, only that I might afford them consolation and happiness. But that could not be. Remorse extinguished every hope. I had been the author of unalterable not goodness, and I lived in daily thoughts lest the being whom I had created would perpetrate some new move, maybe even reenacting another tale, like one WICKED, like their version of it at this time. I had an obscure feeling that all was not over, and that they would still commit some signal, which by its enormity would almost efface the recollection of the past. There was always scope for worry, so long as anything I loved remained behind. My abhorrence of this fiend cannot be conceived. You, dear reader, cannot even estimate the gravity I felt. When I thought of him, I gnashed my teeth, my eyes became inflamed, and I ardently wished to extinguish, like the whole past, the whole creation, so thoughtlessly bestowed life upon them. When I reflected on his malice, my feelings burst all bounds of moderation. I would have made a pilgrimage to the highest peak in the Andes. Could I have there then precipitated him to their base? I wished to see him again, that I might wreak the utmost extent of abhorrence on him, and conquer for William and Justine. Now, our house was a house of frowny faces. My father's health shaken by everything that had happened. Elizabeth is sad and desponding. She no longer took delight in her ordinary occupations. All pleasure seemed to be the opposite towards them. Eternal woe and tears, she then thought, was a just tribute she should pay for Justine. She was no longer that happy creature who in earlier youth wandered with me on the banks of the lake and talked with ecstasy of our future prospects. The first of those sorrows which are sent to wean us from the earth had visited her, and its dimming influence quenched her dearest smiles. When I reflect, my dear cousin, said she, on the sudden surprise of Justine's transit from the earthly realm, I no longer see the world and its works as they before appeared to me. Before, I looked upon the accounts of vice and injustice that I read in books or heard from others as tales of ancient days or imaginary fancies. At least they were remote and more familiar to reason than to the imagination. But now misery has come home, and everything appears to make me frowny-faced. But even yet I am certainly unjust. Everybody believed that poor girl to be, the cause. And if she could have taken that locket, really, assuredly, my judgment is not sound. For the sake of a few jewels, her benefactor and friend, employers, she appeared to love us as if we were her own. I could not consent to anything like that. I couldn't take a locket from anybody, even a free locket stand. But certainly, I should have thought that someone shouldn't. I don't know. I question all. But at the same time, she was innocent. I feel she was innocent. You are of the same opinion, and that comforts me and confirms me. When falsehood can look so like the truth, who can assure themselves a certain happiness? I feel as if I were walking on the edge of a precipice towards which thousands are crowding and endeavoring to plunge me into an abyss. For if Justine's innocent, that means someone else took the locket and they're just walking around free, perhaps even respected. But even if it was I that they had said took the locket, I wouldn't change places with that person just strutting around, looking at going for boat rides or whatever out on the lake, maybe at the same time as you. I listened to this discourse with agony. I, not indeed, but in effect, was a true Villian. Elizabeth read my anguish in my countenance and kindly taking my hand said, "My dearest friend, you must calm yourself. These events have affected me. Goodness knows how deeply, but I am not so wretched as you are. There is an expression of despair and sometimes fire in your eyes, in your countenance, that makes me tremble. Dear Victor, banish these dark passions. Remember the friends around you who center all their hopes in you. Have we lost the power of rendering you happy? While we love, while we are true to each other, here in this land of peace and beauty, your hometown, may we reap every tranquil blessing. What can disturb our peace? And could not such words from her, who I fondly prized before every other gift of fortune, suffice to chase away the fiend that lurked in my heart? Even as she spoke, I drew near to her, as if in worry, lest at that very moment they would appear. Thus not the tenderness of friendship, nor the beauty of the earth, nor of heaven, could redeem my soul from woe. The very accents of love were ineffectual. I was encompassed by a cloud which no beneficial influence could penetrate. It was like a deer on the run with some untrodden brake there to gaze upon things. But that wasn't even a good description. Sometimes I could cope with the sullen despair that overwhelmed me. But other times the whirlwind passions of my soul drove me to seek by bodily exercise and by change of place some relief from my intolerable sensations. It was during an access of this kind that I suddenly left my home and, bending my steps towards the near alpine valleys, sought in magnificence the eternity of such scenes to forget myself and my ephemeral, because human sorrows, my wanderings were directed towards the valley of Chamonix. I had visited it frequently during my boyhood. 6 years had passed since then. I was a wreck, but naught had changed in these savage and enduring scenes. I performed the first part of my journey on horseback. I always hired a mule, as a more sure-footed and least liable to trip on these rugged roads. The weather was fine. It was about the middle of the month of August, nearly 2 months after Justine had not gotten off, and that miserable epoch from which I dated all my woe. The weight upon my spirit was sensibly lightened as I plunged yet deeper into the ravine of the Arve. The immense mountains and precipices that overhung me on every side, the sounds of the river raging among the rocks, and the dashing of the waterfalls around, spoke of a power as mighty as omnipotence. And I ceased to fear or to bend before any being less almighty than that which had created and ruled the elements, here displayed in their most terrific guise. Still I ascended higher. The valley assumed a more magnificent and astonishing character. Ruined castles hanging on the precipices of piney mountains, in the impetuous Arve, and the cottages ever here and there, peeping forth from among the trees, formed a scene of singular beauty, but it was augmented and rendered sublime by the mighty Alps, whose white and shining pyramids and domes towered above all, as belonging to another earth, the habitations of a race of other beings. I passed the bridge of Pelletier, where the ravine which the river forms opened before me, and I began to ascend the mountain that overhangs it. Soon after, I entered the valley of Chamonix. The valley of Chamonix. This valley is more wonderful and sublime, but not so beautiful and picturesque as that of Servax, through which I just passed. The high and snowy mountains were its immediate boundaries, but I saw no more ruined castles and fertile fields. Immense glaciers approached the road. I heard the rumbling thunder of a falling snow, Avila snow, and marked the smoke of its passage. Mount Blanc, the Mount Blanc, the supreme and magnificent Mount Blanc, raised itself from its surrounding foothills, and its tremendous dome overlooked the valley. A tingling, long-lost sense of pleasure often came across me during this journey. Some turn in the road, some new object, suddenly perceived and recognized, reminded me of days gone by, and were associated with the light-hearted gaiety of boyhood. The very winds whispered in soothing accents, and maternal nature bade me weep no more. Then again the kindly influence ceased to act. I found myself fettered again to grief and in indulging in all the misery of reflection. Then I spurred on my horse or mule or both, striving to forget the world, my fears, and more than all, myself. Or, in a more desperate fashion, I alighted and threw myself on the grass, weighed down by worry, and woe. At length, I arrived at the village of Chamonix. Exhaustion succeeded the extreme fatigue, both of body and of mind, which I had endured. For a short space of time, I remained at the window watching the pallid lightnings that played upon Mont Blanc, and listening to the rushing of the Arve, which pursued its noisy way beneath. The same lulling sounds acted as a lullaby to my too keen sensations. When I placed my head upon my pillow, sleep crept over me. I felt it as it came, and blessed the giver of oblivion. Good night. All right, but Scoots here. This is your Tuck-You-In message, mostly for super listeners, though any listener that's listening right now, you could partake in this by, like, if you're a temporary listener, you're a new listener, you only listen from time to time, remember that what I talk about in the intro, other listeners are rooting for your good night's sleep, so you can receive that energy and comfort across the deep, dark night that other listeners are sending you. And you could send it out right now, right? You could send out your comfort or rooting for other people, even if they can't sleep, even if they're awake right now, that they have some comfort and relief, some companionship or some distraction in the deep, dark night. So you can receive or send any listener. You could do that. Now, with super listeners, would love it if you're, particularly if you're listening right now and you happen to be listening and hearing me and you fall asleep fast, or you're an all-night listener, you're the two key demographics that literally the future of Sleep With Me will depend on. If any of you end up hearing me and listening to me more than are currently doing so, or if I just slowly get through to more people that fall asleep fast, people that listen all night long, and then any other super listeners, people that have been listening over 3 years, people that have been listening over a year, people that have been listening over 5 years, people that listen 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week. You're the listeners I kind of need. Well, I mean, the reality is, like, if you're listening to me right now and hearing me, whether it's in this Tuck-You-In message or before the podcast starts or in the mid-roll of the podcast, the reality is you're like, and I think a lot of people dismiss this, but the stats back it up. Really, you're the one person listening and hearing me right now. And that's why I'm trying this new approach, because we still have to get through to people whose lives are made better by the podcast, that we need your support on Sleep With Me Plus. But it starts before that, right? And while I have to keep asking for support and keep pointing out how important it is if you value the podcast to support it back, and that Sleep With Me Plus was built with super listeners in mind, no ads, different versions of the show designed for people that fall asleep fast, people that listen all night long, people that have very specific favorites and like to build playlists of their favorites, people with particular tastes about the podcast of certain episodes but not other styles of episodes, people that are super fans of the podcast. super listeners, people, and I don't know, or if you're hearing me and listening to me right now, are you a super listener? If not, just root for other listeners or be rooted for. Or if you're curious, check out a trial of Sleep With Me Plus. But any super listener, there's 4 stages, I guess. Let me look at my notes here. Well, the whole thing I've been doing in the intros over the past few months and in the last minisode is that we're here rooting for other listeners, right? Or being rooted for in the deep, dark night. Because that's what the show's about, is like gentle caring, gentle relief at a distance, sending comfort across the deep, dark night to people that are out there, people just like you, or people a lot different than you, but that we all share something, right? And now is where I'm trying to deepen that conscious connection and choice in a multitude of ways. So each time you listen to the show now, you get this chance to participate in a passive way and think about who else is listening right now. Like, are you, because there's a strong possibility when I get to these messages that you might be the only one listening and paying attention right now, but maybe there are a couple other people listening and paying attention right now. And do they listen the same style as you? Are they struggling with sleep in the same way you struggle with, or is it different? And can you root for them? Maybe they're an all-night listener, or maybe they fall asleep fast, or maybe they're an occasional listener just going through a tough time. And you can decide, do you want to root for them? Do you want to send them comfort right now across the deep, dark night? And can you sense that they're out there rooting for you to fall asleep, or to have some relief, or to have a distraction and a friend in the deep, dark night? That they're bore friends with you, right? That not just me as the person that narrates this podcast, but that there's someone else out there hoping that your life is more manageable tomorrow, and ideally that you could be out there flourishing on a regular basis. And if you're a super listener, right, particularly, again, if you're an all-night listener, you listen multiple times a week, or you fall asleep fast, or you've been listening for years, maybe you're the one all of us are quietly rooting for to support the show, because we do need to reach that goal of 1,500 super listeners supporting the show back. And that's out of a large number of super listeners. But the thing is, most super listeners are like, no, so it's someone else will do it. I'll do it later. Well, right now, you could do it, right? You could root for another person. You could be rooted for. You could do both of those things. Or you could support the show, or you could root for someone else to support the show. Who is it out there that you're rooting for? Like, who is going to be that hero or heroine? And maybe they're hearing, maybe you're the one, you're hearing all the other listeners starting to root for you. Are you out there? Are you going to support the show? Maybe you support it because you want ad-free episodes. You're supporting it for yourself, and it helps other people. Or maybe you're supporting it because you listen all night long and it's just more convenient to support the show and listen all night long. Maybe you're going to support it because you want it to be there for you in 6 months or 12 months or 3 months from now. Maybe you're going to support it because you know the podcast makes your life better. And you hear me and you know I'm serious. You say, hey, we can't do this without especially all-night listeners and people that fall asleep fast, but all super listeners, a percentage of them supporting the show back. That's how we pay the bills. That's how we're able to be here. But maybe it's not you, but can you root for that person? But maybe it is. Can you feel all those listeners rooting for one another and then rooting for that one person out of 20, right? That's who we need, of super listeners. So are you those 19 people getting rooted for? That's pretty cool. It's cool enough. Or are you the person we're all rooting for to support the show? If you're hearing me and listening for me right now and you can hear that, it's like yeah. Rooting for you to support the show. Don't wait, right? That's the biggest thing I've been learning from this campaign, from the people that do end up supporting the show. They're like, yeah, I was tuning you out. where I was kind of passing on the message, saying, I'll do it later. Somebody else will do it. I want to do it, but I don't know. How many of those listeners are rooting for you right now to overcome those small obstacles and support the show right now at sleepifiedpodcast.com/plus? I know I'm rooting for you, but I'm rooting for every listener. That's why I'm here. That's why the show isn't behind a paywall. That's why I work so hard, and that's why I'm willing to put myself out here and kind of be, have other listeners have strong feelings about me asking directly, because you're important. And that's why I show up day after day, night after night. I love making this show because I love participating in this thing where I know what it feels like for me in the deep, dark night. You know what it feels like for you in the deep, dark night. And you know there's other people out there that share this with us. And in the end, that's really what it's about. So I don't know if you could feel that. And I don't know if you could send it or receive it. And sometimes you might need to receive that energy. Sometimes you might want to send it. But a lot of times it's just nice knowing it's there, at least for me, knowing that you're out there and the other listeners are out there too. So thank you so much for listening to the show. And if you decide the podcast has changed your life for the better and you want to make sure it's like you want to be that person we're all rooting for, you could support the show right now at sleepifiedpodcast.com/plus. And then set up the bonus content tomorrow when you're more awake. Thanks.